Salutations readers, welcome back to my channel. My name is Nkechi, and for today this is going to be a random but impromptu Kingfisher fantasy reading vlog. So I kind of wanted to do a vlog like this because just completely random, completely impromptu, because my library, I got audiobook holds and I got a physical copy of a book, and then I also got an e-arc of T. Kingfisher's newest release coming out, I think, in August. So I figured, why not just have a dedicated reading vlog to T. Kingfisher? Specifically on fantasy, because that's the only things I have is her fantasy. I've only read What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night, so the Sworn Soldiers series, but I have not read anything else. I have not even read any more of her horror, so I really want to just give her fantasy a shot to see if I really like any of them. So I kind of have a little bit of a range here as far as the fantasy that I did choose. So yeah, that's what this vlog is. So let's start off with, I think, the one book that I have physically, and that is Illuminations. I think on Storygraph it says this is like a YA fantasy. It's not very long either. It's literally about 250 pages, and I'm not really sure what this story is about. I think this is a story about, I think, someone named Rosa who's helping her family, something about a studio, and painting. I don't know, something about a bird and a paintbrush. I don't know. But this definitely seems like a nice, cozy fantasy time. I just found this while browsing around my local library branch. I saw this on the shelf, and I picked it up. So, yeah. It's actually the first time I've ever seen a non-Tor and a non-Saga Press T. Kingfisher title. So very much glad at least I got a chance to pick up Illuminations. And then for the audiobooks, one of them is Nettle Bone. I know this one's more of a recent one. I think it came out a couple years ago. I also know that this is a dark fantasy kind of story that's also kind of like fairy tale-esque. I don't really know much else. I just know that some people who've read it, they've loved it. People who are like about it. So I don't know. I want to see where I lie with it. It's also pretty short. I think the audiobook is about 9 hours. And then the other book I have is A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. I think this one's more young adult based on like the title and also the cover. It just seems pretty fun. Also, this is also 9 hours long. Again, a lot of these books are just short. They're not really long, which I'm grateful for. I don't want to have to worry about the length of these books, but thankfully they are short. So yeah, this one also just seems like a nice, fun time. And then the book that I have here on my Kindle, which is an e-arc, it comes out, I don't remember, I think it's August 20th comes out, but The Sorceress Comes to Call. This one I know for sure as like a dark Goose Girl retelling / reimagining, and it's fantasy. That's it. That's all I really know about it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all the books I really have of T. Kingfisher. 3 I'm borrowing from the library, and 1 I have as an e-arc. So yeah, I don't know which one I'm gonna be starting with first. I probably should start with the ones though that are due sooner. So like the audiobooks I should probably start off with. I don't know necessarily how this is gonna work. There was no much planning here. I'm just doing it because I felt like it. I'm going to talk to you all later, most likely when I finish my first T. Kingfisher fantasy book. Salutations, y'all. So it has been nearly 48 hours since the intro, and I've already finished 2 books. So let's talk about it. So yesterday I finished Nettle Bone, and this one is a dark fairy tale like adventure story where we follow a woman who pretty much does these impossible tasks so that she can find a way to murder this prince who has married to one of her sisters, and in fact is actually the reason why her other sister, because she has 2 sisters before, and one of them died because of this prince guy, and now this other one is experiencing domestic abuse, like physical domestic abuse. So that is prominent for this story is domestic abuse, especially physical abuse. And also there's a lot regarding pregnancy and miscarriages too, because this other sister of our protagonist here, she's also been pregnant many times, but she's also miscarried a lot of times as well. So that's a pretty big proponent to this story. Just to let y'all know, it's pretty much just to find ways to like kill this guy because, well, the actual fuck. And yeah, I actually really like this one. This one, it was really easy just to get to, and it's also short. Like, again, it's like about 9 hours long, so it didn't take long to just read it. I actually just had a really good time with it. It's definitely it's very strong fairy tale vibes. It has like similar fantasy tropes regarding like a princess and a prince and someone who's like not like a guard, but someone who's like been like in the military and stuff, kind of like a companion who the princess falls in love with. But we also have like this witch character. We have these creepy familiars. Like we have this bone dog kind of creature that was one of the impossible tasks from this witch. that reluctantly helps our main girl here to kill his prince. And yeah, I think it was really, really good. Like, it didn't like overstay its welcome. I didn't think it needed to be expanded upon. I didn't get really bored. I didn't like love it or anything. I don't think it really wowed me enough to give it a 5, but it was a nice enough story and I enjoyed it enough. It's definitely dark though, so yeah. Domestic abuse, specifically with physical abuse, miscarriages, pregnancy, there's even child death as well, like the murdering of a child, death in general as well. And I think there's also animal death. It's minor though, not on page, but it is a minor thing though, just to let y'all know. So yeah, that was Nettle Bone. I really had a good time with that. I really like the audiobook production for it as well. So yeah, it was just a really good story. And I'm glad that I read it. I wasn't sure if I was gonna enjoy it, since I've seen some people who've read this one and not really like love it or anything or wow by it. Again, I wasn't really wowed by it, but I just had a really good time. And I'm always here for like a fairy tale-like adventure stories. I don't know why, but they work for me. So yeah, had a good time with it. And then literally like less than 10 minutes ago, I started A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking yesterday, and then I just finished it. So this one is a YA fantasy. The other one, Nettle Bone, was adult fantasy. This one's YA fantasy. So I found this teenage girl who is a wizard, but her magic is in regard to baking and baked goods. And she finds like a dead body in her aunt and uncle's bakery. And I think one of the pals was trying to like, and not like frame her, but like they were trying to see if she's the one who killed this person. But it kind of veers off of that to being more than that, with a little bit more political intrigue and stuff. And this one I liked. I didn't really love it as much or even liked it as much as Nettle Bone. This one does also feature like some like fantasy discrimination, because we have these wizard people who are pretty much being targeted for just whatever reason because of the fact that they have magic and stuff. So yeah, so there is mistreatment of wizards here, and that's a big proponent to the story. Let's see what are the content warnings. There is murder for sure, and death, specifically child death. We also have death of a parent, minor, more of the past with our main character here. And there's also talks regarding war, which is also on page as well. Despite this being like a lighthearted kind of like story, it does get into like war and stuff, because like there is like this, I won't say like a coup, but there is like someone within the palace who is pretty much practically wants to overthrow this small city-state kind of government with the Duchess, who's in charge of the city-state. I mean, I think it was just fun enough time. We had definitely doing a lot of baked goods as like used for like weapons and like in a way to defend this city-state against this usurper. So yeah, it was fine. The main character is fine. The only thing though I definitely have to say though for this one, but also Nettle Bone, is that I do feel like both these main characters are kind of a little bit naive. This main character though is a little bit more naive, I feel like, than Nettle Bone. But I think with their circumstances, I think it kind of makes sense for them to be a little bit naive. I mean, with our main character in A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, I mean, she is a teenager. And she's also a baker who can do magic, but like I feel like she's definitely more sheltered here. Same thing with like in the main character of Nettle Bone. Even though she's 30, but she has also been sheltered, even as a princess as well, and then also works in like a nunnery. She was pretty sheltered. So both of these main characters here so far of like are sheltered young women or a young girl with a defensive baking's case. But I don't know, these are not particularly protagonists that I really are going to be like memorable for me. I think it's more of just like the vibe of these books. So with A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, this one's just a cozy, fun time. Like this is definitely like a pretty solid, cozy fantasy. It's just that it doesn't do too much for me, I guess. Especially since I literally had Nettle Bone, which is definitely more darker for sure than this one. But it still felt kind of cozy. I don't know how Nettle Bone did that, but Nettle Bone did that. But A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, though, was still a fun time. Fun, silly, goofy time. And I do think that these kind of stories really work well for me via audio, because I feel like if I were to read them physically or with my eyeballs, I don't know if that's really going to work for me. So we shall see with like Illuminations and The Sorceress Comes to Call, whenever I get to those ones, how that's going to work for me. We shall see. But those are not even going to be my next ones that I'm going to read, actually, because I found some more Kingfisher audiobooks. So that's also what I came here to update y'all on. So we're extending this vlog with 2 more Kingfisher. So one of them is Thornhedge. This one is a novella that came out last year. I think this is like a Sleeping Beauty one. I think some twist on Sleeping Beauty. And then the other one is Swordheart. This one It's pretty much like a standalone novel that's set in the same world as I think the Clockwork Boys duology, which I have not read at all. I have not read that duology, so I don't know if I really need to read that duology first before getting into Swordheart, but I do want to at least try to read Swordheart in this vlog. So yeah, Thornhedge is 4 hours. It's literally a novella, so if I listen to that speed, I should literally finish it maybe within the day, or maybe I'll just read it tomorrow, who knows. And then Swordheart is gonna be a while, but at least I have that audiobook. And I do have the physical of Illuminations, and then the ebook for A Sorceress Comes to Call. So that's pretty much my remaining TBR now for this vlog. And as far as what I'm going to read next, I think I should probably take an audiobook break and really just read my eyeballs. So I'm gonna try Illuminations. Okay, yep, here it is. So I'm gonna try to read this one. This is not long at all. I think if I were to get the audiobook, this is probably like a 9-hour audiobook. This one I think is another YA fantasy, so it's probably just gonna be a fun, cozy, goofy little time, like A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. But I think this one has to do more with garden painting though, so yeah, maybe I'll have more time with this one. I'll let y'all know what I really think about this one. If I end up with this one, who knows, I might even just get to the audiobooks instead. I don't know, it depends on what I'm really in the mood for. Alright, salutations y'all. So it's been, I don't know actually how long it's been since I last updated for this vlog. It's been a few days. So I just came here to tell y'all that I have finished reading Thornhedge. And I think I'm gonna give this one a 3. I think 2.75, 3, somewhere around there. So this one is a kind of like a, this is another fairy tale like one, but this is a novella. We follow Toadling, who is some sort of a fairy change, like a fairy of some sort. A fairy who was born human. And she tasked herself to have this tower with this thorn hedge around the tower because there's a sleeping maiden. Thing is though, is that the sleeping maiden has to be up in the tower. It's kind of like giving like Sleeping Beauty kind of vibes. And there's a night, and we get some backstory regarding the tower and how that'll happen. And you know, it's a solid story. I didn't really love it. This is not a fairy tale, particularly for me, that I really like. It's not like with Nettle Bone, where it's like a more darker fairy tale. It's a little, and also Nettle Bone was longer than Thornhedge. This one's like literally a novella. But I have found with Nettle Bone that there was a lot more side characters that I was definitely a lot more invested in, and even the personality of the characters, especially Mara and Nettle Bone, was more interesting to me than Toadling. Toadling was fine, but like, just alright. And even compared to like A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking, I feel like this one's a little bit lower for me than that one because I felt like we had like more stakes regarding that one. And again, that one is longer than this one. It's literally a novella. Not to say that it should have been longer, but like really it's just that I don't think there was enough space in this novella to have more side characters. Like I felt like this should have been a little bit more of a bigger cast. So yeah, I just really wish that I really did enjoy this one more. It seems like that people have enjoyed it, but for me, I'm just like, you know, it was a solid enough read. It was solid. It's not a bad book. As far as fairy tale books are concerned, I mean, I don't read a lot of it, but I have been interested in a lot of fairy tale books. And this one it's solid. It's fine. I don't have much preference either way. So this could be a 3, it could be a 2.75. I'm not totally sure. I need to run through Cawpile. I haven't been officially rated on my store graph just yet, but right now, it's not gonna be higher than a 3. So that's pretty much gonna be the rating for it. So yeah, that's all I have. As far as content warnings, so it says here we have death, which is true. We have confinement. Animal cruelty is definitely in here, and which we also have animal death. There is suicide and murder, so that's something to keep in mind. And death of parent, which is a minor thing, and also a little bit of violence and blood. But yeah, those are pretty much the only prominent ones. I don't really have much else besides that. Now, I think my next read will probably be Swordheart because unfortunately the audiobook for that one is doing less than a week. So it's probably gonna be best to listen to that one next. And then after that, then we'll finally be reading something with my eyeballs. But yeah, that'll be my next read. Unless I read Illuminations or Sorceress Comes to Call quickly. But Swordheart is 15 hours long. And even if I listen at 2 times speed, it's still a long book. So I'm not totally sure if I'll start Swordheart right away or not. That's where we're at. Anyways, I will let y'all know in the next update. Salutations, y'all. It has been, I think, a few days. yes, it has been a few days since I last updated y'all. And as you can tell from this background, new place. I'm gonna be here for a bit. I'm doing some house sitting, so yes, this is our new background for a while. I don't know how many videos I'm gonna be filming in this house. We shall see. But just to let y'all know for context. Anyways, I just want to come here to let y'all know that I finished reading Swordheart. And I actually really enjoyed this one. The premise of this one is that there is a middle-aged woman who is a widow. Her husband has been deceased for a while, and her in-laws are trying to pretty much steal her inheritance that she rightfully deserves to have. And she's just been fed up. She's actually been confined into her bedroom for a few days, and she wants to commit suicide. But before she even got a chance to do that, the sword that she uses to do that has a person in it, has a man. So yeah, who's immortal. I have to say, that's a very interesting premise. I'm like, I've never read anything like a premise like this, but it was actually pretty fun to just read a story like this. And this is also a fantasy romance, so it was also kind of nice to see them actually growing attached to each other and really like each other in their romance. And I really did not mind their romance, actually. I actually liked the inclusion of this romance because I feel like the tone and the type of story this is, the romance put a little bit of something into the story. Because as far as the plot itself, the plot regarding like getting her inheritance is pretty much the main part here, which is not the most interesting plot, to be honest. But thankfully the romance at least made it up for it, so that says something. And that's not something I usually say when I'm going some romance, so props to Kingfisher for that. Really like it. I give this one 4 stars, so the same rating as Nettle Bone. Mostly because of the fact that, like, I don't know, I do like on how Kingfisher just writes middle-aged women who are kind of compassionate, but they're also naive. So that is actually something I have been noticing about these books, is that Kingfisher, at least for like the adult main characters who are middle-aged women, honestly, which is pretty cool actually. They're kind, but they're also naive, which can be irritating in and of itself. Cause like, how are you this naive? But like, they're not like dumb. Like, they are aware of things. They just have their own quirks and intricacies that makes it go like for Hala, who's the main character, her thing is that she's really into like, she's like really curious person. Like, she asks like a lot of questions, so that can easily be pretty annoying. But sometimes I'm just baffled by the things that she asks. I'm like, this is not something I would expect someone who would unironically would really ask such a question. Like, she's genuinely curious, which is something that like just scratches the itches in my mind. I do like a pretty curious main character, but the kind of questions she asks though, I mean, I guess, but I don't know. She's a solid enough character in and of itself, and I like her personality. Again, it's kind of a toss-up for me regarding naive characters, but like, if you're naive and dumb, that's where I'm gonna have issues. At least with Hala and even with Mara from Nettle Bone, both of them are naive because both of them are also sheltered. Even in Thornhedge, actually, they're all 3 of these adult middle-aged women main characters are naive, but they're also sheltered, so that's where the naivete comes in. But they also are kind of compassionate, which is also nice. But like, I don't know, like, they're not the kind of female main characters that I tend to gravitate towards, that I really want to read about for the most part. But I don't mind these kind of characters, at least the way that Kingfisher has written them, and also written them in these kinds of stories specifically. Not so much with Thornhedge, but like, at least with some like Nettle Bone or even Swordheart, it was fine and solid enough. And then Salkar, what's his name? What's this guy's name? Why am I not even remembering this freaking guy's name? Sarkis. Okay. And then with Sarkis, I actually did really like him. And also I do, like, in the audiobook, he has an accent. I'm not totally sure on what kind of accent they were going for. But like, I do like the accent. I just don't know. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's some sort of a Celtic accent. I don't think it's Scottish. I don't think it's a Scottish accent. It could be an Irish accent. I don't know. Very somewhere around a Celtic language. I'm just not totally sure, honestly, on the accent part. Someone else needs to explain that to me, but whatever. I do actually really like Sarkis, the man who's in the sword that whole thing and the lore behind all that is really cool. And another thing too is that Swordheart is set in the same world as like the Clock Tower Wars duology with like the Clockwork Boys and Wonder Engine. You don't need to read either of those books to understand this story, because I didn't read that duology before reading this one. It's set in the same world, and also there is the inclusion of the Saints from like the Saints of Steel series that's currently going on. So I think it's pretty cool that these kinds of series are like overlapping, unless that was intentionally so. Again, I've never even read Clockwork Boys or even Paladin's Grace, but now I'm actually kind of interested to read both of them now. So I don't know. I just have to say that Kingfisher is, even with things I'm like, not so sure about, is really like the cozy fantasy for sure. She's good with that, but I do think she shines a little bit more regarding this like fantasy romance, because like this fantasy romance actually, like I haven't really enjoyed a really good fantasy romance in a long minute. I feel like the last time I really enjoyed a fantasy romance was the Made Mishap series, but like anything that's regarding Swordheart or anything that's like a T. Kingfisher fantasy romance, I would not mind reading more of that. I wanted to give it 4.25, maybe a 4.5, but there was a little bit something regarding like Mala's deceased husband, and I feel like the way, it's not, I don't know if this was really intentional or not, or this is just part of like the world, but like, also, I don't really want to say too much either, because it's spoilery, but also not spoilery at the same time. But there is something about the husband, not because the husband himself is like a bad person, I don't think, but the family definitely has treated Hala's deceased husband pretty poorly, and even the setup on how Hala and her deceased husband even became married in the first place, that whole situation is already fucked up. I'm like, that's a really fucked up situation. And honestly, if you really think about it, it's also pretty acephobic, at least on the for the husband's sake. I'm like, that's actually pretty acephobic of them, kind of like forcing them to be together like this, but that's just my interpretation. I don't want to go into it right now because that's getting more spoilery. But if you've read Swordheart or are interested, and y'all can ask that in the comments, and I wouldn't mind discussing it more further. But it's just in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that one, but it did kind of deteriorate my rating just a little bit, but since it's not part of like the main story, I didn't want to knock it out too much, but I would say I've taken off a quarter of a star for this one. So it could have been a 4.25, but I'm giving it a solid 4. I think it deserves to be a solid 4, but it's definitely inches just a little bit more over Nettle Bone for me, just a little bit. I pretty much had a good time with that one. I did try to like sample a little bit of Illuminations while I was out and about today, and I only just try to sample it. I don't really count it as a start if I'm only just trying to sample through the first couple of chapters. And to be quite honest, I'm removing this for this vlog. I am not interested to actually read this in full. It's in a writing style that I really do not care for. This is more a young adult cozy fantasy, which is fine, but like I don't really like the actual writing style in here. The voice of the character is really annoying to me, and I don't want to try to force myself to read this for like 250 something pages. I just cannot. And an audiobook, actually, I don't think I even want to do that to myself in an audiobook, actually. So no, this is going to be a pass for me, unfortunately. And maybe that's also a sign too to not really bother with T. Kingfisher's young adult fantasy or young adult leaning fantasy titles, because I had a problem with this with like a Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. I liked it enough, but like the baking thing was not interesting, and also the character voice was fine, but it could be borderline or just annoying. This one was just going to be borderline annoying. I'm like, I don't want to read something that's borderline annoying within a young main character. I just cannot. Illuminations is out of the running for this vlog, which means it leaves me with only one book left. A Sorceress Comes to Call, which is an e-arc. The only thing I know about this one is a dark, or like maybe I should say a darker retelling of the Goose Girl, which I am not familiar with this myth at all, with this fairy tale at all. Oh, what was I saying? Oh yeah, again, I'm not really familiar with this fairy tale at all. The only other book I know of that has to do with like a Goose Girl, I think was like the Little Thieves series by Margaret Owen. But with A Sorceress Comes to Call, I don't know much else besides that. But yeah, it's pretty much, I will end the vlog pretty much when I finish reading A Sorceress Comes to Call. Salutations, y'all. So it has been, I think, about a week since I last updated y'all. And I'm just gonna end the vlog, honestly. I don't want this vlog to go any longer than it really needs to. I have started reading A Sorceress Comes to Call, and I'm about 10% of the way through, but I don't want to rush to read this book just for this vlog, so I'm just gonna end the vlog here with 10%. So far, I'm enjoying it. It's a solid read so far. One thing to know for sure though, as far as content warnings though, is definitely child abuse with Cordelia and her mother. Yeah, that's, yeah, there's some very much strong child abuse there, so I just want to let y'all know about that. But that's pretty much it. I'm not familiar with the Goose Girl story, so there's not much I can really say as far as like T. Kingfisher's interpretation of it, but it's a grim fairy tale, and grim fairy tales tend to be very, you know, grim, so this is supposed to be a darker version of that. I won't be surprised if it actually gets really, really dark and stuff. So I'm like, you know, yeah, but I want to take my time with it. I don't want to rush through it. And it's been about a week and I haven't been quite as in the mood to really pick it up. So I'm just gonna end the vlog here. So what did I read? Technically speaking, I've read only 4 T. Kingfisher books, which technically speaking was the original plan anyways, but then of course I wanted to add 2 more books. I mean, the 2 books I added, I mean, I read those ones, but it just meant that the other ones, it's like, they kind of got stuck in the wayside. It is what it is. So I think we start off with Nettle Bone, which I gave 4 stars. Then A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking was 3. Thornhedge was 3. Swordheart was 4. I decided to just not include Illuminations because I was just definitely not interested. And then I'm still currently reading A Sorcerer's Coastal Call. So far, one thing I have definitely learned about T. Kingfisher's fantasy is that I definitely am not a fan of her young adult fantasy with like way too young of protagonists. I just can't. It does nothing for me. I don't find the characters endearing or lovable. I just like, you know, you just exist. You're just there as a vessel for us to watch this story. You're fun enough. So I do know I did give A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking a 3, but honestly I think it's a little too generous. I think really it's just a 2.5. It's okay. Like, it's cute, it's fine, but it's not going to be memorable for me. Same thing with a little bit of Thornhedge, but I feel like Thornhedge is a little bit of a leg up because of what I was trying to do as like a Sleeping Beauty retelling kind of story. Other than that, not much about Thornhedge. But Nettle Bone though, I definitely like this dark adult fantasy vibe that it's going on, and I definitely really like T. Kingfisher what she was doing with like fantasy romance with Swordheart. So I'm definitely more curious to read more of some like fantasy romance by her. We'll see about like other fantasy books as well, but for sure fantasy romance. So that's something to at least look forward to. But yeah, that's pretty much all I really have for y'all. So I hope y'all enjoyed this vlog. I don't know, it's kind of a chaotic vlog, honestly. I think this might have been a little bit all over the place. We shall see it editing. But thank you all for watching. Comment down below any of y'all's thoughts. If any of y'all are T. Kingfisher fans, especially if you read any for fantasy and fantasy romance, you know, let me know your thoughts down below. Are y'all curious if I were to do like a T. Kingfisher horror vlog? I've only read What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night, but I could do a reading vlog of just reading the rest of her horror, like The Twisted Ones, The Hollow Places, and I think a house with good bones, or it's a house of good bones, something like that. The Good Bones one that came out like last year. So, you know, there's that. You know, that's an option for the future. You know, comment down below if y'all will like to see a vlog like that. Now, if you made this far into the video and you don't have nothing else to say, you just want to leave me an emoji, leave me some sort of like fantasy fairy tale kind of emoji. So that could be an elf, it could be a fairy, it could be a witch, it could be some sort of demon monster thing. I don't know, just pick anything, even a wand even, just something that's giving magical fairy tale like. Even a crown, whichever one. Anyways, thank you all for coming on to this video, and like if you like it, comment down below your thoughts, subscribe if you want to, and I hope to see you all in my next video. Bye!